Chapter 11. Bones yanked the wheel, steered the truck over to the side of the road, and brought it to a skidding halt on a patch of hard-packed dirt beneath the shade of an old oak tree. To their left, a high chain-link fence topped with razor wire ran as far as the eye could see in both directions. To their right, on the other side of the street, lay a mobile home park. Jessie moved to cross the street, but Bones grabbed her by the arm. "No, that's where they'll expect us to go, and there's no cover."
"Where else is there?"
"Follow me." He clambered up into the bed of the pickup truck, then up onto the top of the cab. Directly above them hung a fat tree limb, which extended beyond the fence. "Can you make it?" he asked.
"I was a gymnast in high school. I think I can handle it."
"That's what I'm talking about." He cupped his hands and gave her a boost. Jessie swung up onto the limb with a strength and grace Bones could not help but admire. She quickly scrambled along the length of the limb, well past the coils of razor wire, until the limb began to sag beneath her weight.
"Aren't you coming?"
she called back. "As soon as you're down, I'm afraid it won't hold both of us." Jessie didn't argue. She swung down, dangled in midair for a moment, and then dropped to the ground. As soon as she let go, Bones followed. He had just crossed the fence when Jessie called out a warning.
"Here they come!"
He didn't need to look back. The screech of tires and hum of the engine told him all he needed to know. There was no time to climb a safe distance. He dropped down as soon as he cleared the fence line. The impact sent a sharp pain lancing up his legs and along his spine. He forced himself to his feet, knees screaming in protest, and took Jessie's hand.
"Where to?"
"Down the hill. There are some trees and bushes that will give us some cover." He took her hand and led the way. They scrambled and skidded their way down the steep embankment. Up above, their pursuers screeched to a stop. Car doors slammed and voices rang out. "Which way did they go? Try that way." Bones hoped that way meant the trailer park. That would hopefully buy them some time. At the bottom of the slope, they hit a thick stand of brush and trees. Bones forced his way through and let out a cry of surprise when he stepped out into open space. "Crap!" He snagged the nearest bush, a scraggly juniper, and steadied himself. He stood at the edge of a concrete moat a good 15 feet across and 20 feet deep. "What the hell?" He didn't have time to inspect his surroundings any farther because Jessie banged into his back, knocking him forward. "Hold on, chick," he said, steadying himself again as he teetered on the edge of the precipice.
"Uh-oh."
Jessie's head peeked out under his outstretched arm.
"End of the line. What is this place?"
"Some kind of drainage ditch, I guess. It doesn't matter what it is. We have to find a way across." Bones' eyes searched the gray concrete channel. On the other side lay another stand of greenery, more cover if they could only find a way over. The voices from the street rose again, closer this time. "Do you think they went over the fence?" "Damn." Bones took Jessie's hand and inched along the edge of the channel. A few agonizing feet along, he stumbled.
"Hey, don't take me down with you,"
Jessie said. "I tripped." He looked down and smiled. An old aluminum extension ladder peeked out from the thick undergrowth. "But I think we've found our way across." He took hold of the ladder and heaved, and it tore free with the sound of ripping vegetation that was too loud for his liking.
"We're going to climb down and back up again?"
A note of doubt hung in Jessie's voice. "Too slow. We're going to make a bridge out of this baby." Carefully, he stretched the ladder out to its full length. He could now see that it was a 16-footer. It might make it across. Might. Carefully, he extended the ladder across the precipice. It clanged down on the concrete lip at the far side of the moat with 6 inches or so to spare on either side. He heard the rattle of the chain-link fence at the top of the hill. The idiots who were chasing them hadn't figured out how to use the tree to get across, at least not yet. "Okay," he said to Jessie. "Go for it. You're a gymnast, so just pretend it's a balance beam and you'll be okay."
"Why am I going first?"
She eyed the ladder with suspicion. "I weigh over 200 pounds. If that thing breaks while I'm on it, I'm down in the pit with a broken leg, and you're stuck on the same side of the pit as those ass clowns." He inclined his head in the direction from which they had come.
"Makes sense, but if this thing doesn't hold me, I swear I will haunt you till your dying day."
"If the ladder doesn't hold, my dying day will be here in a few minutes. Go." Jessie squeezed past him and stepped a tentative foot out onto the ladder. It gave an inch and then held. She let out a breath he hadn't known she'd been holding, extending her arms to either side, and stepped out with her other foot. "Don't look down," he cautioned.
"Shut up, you're distracting me."
He grinned, despite the dire circumstances, and watched with admiration as she made her way across. "Hey, we can climb up on the truck and climb over on that tree limb." a voice shouted. Oh well, they had to figure it out sooner or later. As soon as Jesse stepped off the ladder, Bones mounted it. It creaked under his weight, but he didn't hesitate. He made it across or he died. He took another step and then another. The ladder sagged and he felt it collapsing beneath him. He took a big step and then leaped forward. His makeshift bridge gave all at once and dropped with a noisy clang to the floor of the moat. "Somebody's down there!" one of the men at the top of the hill called. A bullet pinged the wall of the ditch and ricocheted wildly as the report of a pistol reached their ears. "I really wish I had my Glock," Bones muttered. "Come on." He turned and forced his bulk into the dense stand of foliage, and they found themselves at the top of a 10-foot wall. Down below lay an open grassy area interspersed with a few dirt patches and boulders.
"A park,"
Jesse said, peeking around his shoulder.
"We need to get across before they catch up with us."
"I don't think this is— Whoa!" He was cut short when Jesse gave him a hard, unexpected shove in the small of the back, and he found himself flying through the air. For the second time, he hit the ground hard, every joint screaming in pain. He was going to break something if he kept this up. He turned to see Jessie dangling from the lip of the wall. He tried to call out a warning, but she dropped to the ground before he could form the words. She grinned down at him.
"Get off your butt and let's move before those guys find a way across the—"
Her words died on her lips as the blood drained from her face. "That's what I was trying to tell you," Bones said. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw two large, tawny shapes padding toward them. "This isn't a park, it's a zoo." Chapter 12. Bones spread his arms and backed slowly toward Jesse, his eyes flitting between the lion and lioness that were moving toward them. He'd had some experience with wild animals, even predators, but he had a feeling what worked on a bear wouldn't work on these apex predators from the savannah.
"Oh my God,"
Jesse whimpered.
"What are we going to do?"
"No sudden moves," he said, "and try not to show any fear."
"It's all I can do not to faint. How am I supposed to show no fear?"
"Just do your best. Remember, zoo employees work with these animals all the time, so it's not like we're encountering them in the wild." That was technically true, but Bones knew it to be a flimsy hope. Nothing would change the fact that these were wild animals at heart.
"They are beautiful," Jesse managed. "If I wasn't about to die from fear and shock, I might want to give one a hug."
"Same here," Bones lied. Right now he wanted nothing more than to get away. He stole a glance over his shoulder and saw that they were about 20 meters from an access door. It would be locked, but hopefully someone would see them here, and an employee would let them out. "Follow me." Keeping his eyes on the big cats and Jesse between himself and the wall, he began inching to his left toward the door.
"I wonder what the tourists are thinking,"
Jesse said. Bones glanced toward the front of the exhibit and realized they were screened from view by a huge boulder in the corner of a wall. No one knew they were here. "I don't know." The big male paused, sniffed the air, and gave a great shake of his mane. The female crept a few paces closer before also pausing and giving an audible sniff.
"What are they doing?"
"I don't know," Bones said. "Just keep moving." The door seemed to be no closer as they made their slow way through the lion habitat, but the lions made no move to follow them, and a flicker of hope sparked inside him. Maybe they could make it. Just then the male let out a low rumble, every muscle in its body tensed. "Holy crap," he thought, "so close." "If either of them makes a move for us, I want you to run for the door," he said.
"But what about you?"
There was no time to answer. Voices rang out from the direction of the road. Someone shouted, "There they are!" Bones looked up to see the two men who'd been pursuing them standing on the wall at the back of the habitat. The red-haired man raised his pistol and took aim. "Run!" Bones gave Jesse a shove and then sprang to the side as the man squeezed the trigger. The bullet pinged off the wall behind him, a foot from his head. The lions broke and ran at the sound of the shot, heading for safety behind the boulder that dominated the small space. Bones zigged and zagged as he ran for the door, suddenly wishing he were a runt like his friend Matic and not a 6'5" behemoth. Another shot rang out and then another. Both missed. Jesse was tugging at the doorknob, but they were locked in. "Move!" Bones thundered. He leaped, twisted in the air, and drove both feet into the door in a devastating flying sidekick. The door didn't budge, and he found himself lying on the ground, pain coursing through his legs. The door flew open, and a young man in the khaki garb of a zoo employee poked his head out. "What's going on out here?" He cried out in shock as a bullet punched through the door inches from his nose. Bones shouldered him aside and hauled Jesse through the doorway. They dashed away, his cries chasing them down the dimly lit concrete passageway. They ran blindly through the building, winding through the corridors until at last they found an exit door and emerged in the middle of a surprised-looking group of zoo workers.
"What are you two doing in there?"
a sturdy woman of the middle years demanded. "Got lost," Bones said. He took Jessie by the elbow and steered her around the confused group.
"Hold on a minute, how did you even—"
The woman moved to block their path, but Bones froze her with what he liked to call his lethal weapon eyes, modeled after the crazed expressions of Mel Gibson's character. The man was a douche in real life, but he pulled off the borderline lunatic role with ease. As the lady gave way, she mumbled to her companions,
"Call security."
Bones and Jessie quickened their pace and wove through the crowd until they were out of sight of the employees. None had dared follow them.
"Head for the front gate?"
Jessie asked. Bones shook his head. "That's where security is likely to wait for us, and I'll bet one of our friends with the guns back there is waiting for us there while the other watches the truck. We need another way out."
"Such as?"
He scanned the area and quickly spotted what he was looking for. "Over there, behind the concession stand." He pointed to a delivery truck idling behind the concession area, just in front of a locked gate that opened onto an access road. The snow-capped peak of the Rocky Mountains was painted on the sign with the word Coors emblazoned across them in red. It wasn't Dos Equis, but it would do.
"A beer truck?"
Jessie asked.
"Is this really the time?"
"Just follow my lead." They hurried over to the concession stand and stopped a few paces from the truck. Bones watched as the delivery man unloaded a few cases, stowed his hand truck, and then headed inside the concession stand, clipboard in hand. "Come on," Bones said. They hurried over to the truck, double-checked to make sure the coast was clear, and then clambered into the back of the vehicle. The cold air of the refrigerated truck gave him the chills, but he didn't care. He just wanted to get away safely and then figure out their next move. He hastily rearranged some crates, and he and Jessie hunkered down behind them.
"It's freezing in here."
She scooted over and pressed her body against his. He put an arm around her and pulled her close, trying not to let his thoughts drift to her trim, athletic figure and her soft hair.
"You're not going to make a move on me, are you?"
"What? Oh, no. At least not until we get away."
"Fair enough. We'll put a pin in that discussion and circle back to it later."
Bones grinned. He liked this girl. Behind them, the truck door clanged shut and their surroundings went black. Moments later, the engine roared to life and the truck lurched forward.
"So how do we get Manny's truck back?"
Jessie asked. "I'm not sure. Maybe give it a day and then call a tow truck. They won't stand guard there forever." He paused and scratched his chin. "One thing I can't figure, they clearly wanted our research, so why did they come after us once we abandoned the truck? You'd think they'd look inside."
"They won't find the research there. I stuffed it all inside my shirt when we took off. Feel the small of my back."
Bones slid his hand around and, sure enough, felt the thick sheaf of papers there. "Way to think on your feet. I'm impressed." Just then, the truck took a sharp turn, throwing Jessie hard against Bones.
"Not the smoothest ride," she said.
"No, but we're safe."
"How can you be so calm? We've been chased, shot at, almost eaten by lions, and you're so chill, and I don't mean because it's cold in here."
Bones laughed. "Chick, you wouldn't believe the things I've been through." Chapter 13. As luck would have it, the driver's next stop was Giovanni's Pizzeria, Jessie's restaurant of choice. She and Bones slipped out unseen and worked their way around to the front lot. Located in a rundown strip mall, the savory aromas wafting from the restaurant were, in Bones' opinion, the only things to recommend the location. He scanned the area just to make sure their pursuers hadn't somehow figured out their means of escape and followed them. But all he saw were a few people begging for change, and an obvious drug deal going down in the corner of the parking lot. Inside, they settled into a booth adorned with a red and white check tablecloth and ordered up 2 Dos Equis and a pepperoni and green chili pizza. While they waited for their food, Bones kept an eye on the parking lot while Jessie quietly gave him an overview of her research.
"The Hollow Earth legend has been around for a long time," she began. "Basically, there are 2 competing theories. One is that humans, or a species very much like humans, live beneath the Earth. The other is that aliens live, or once lived there, maybe observing us, maybe interbreeding with humans to form the modern human race."
She rolled her eyes. Bones wondered how she would react if he told her about some of the things he had seen and experienced in that regard.
"Come on," She reached across the table and poked his arm. No mocking comments?
For the sake of argument, let's say we're considering all possibilities.
All right. Jessie smirked and returned to her papers. The Nazis were particularly invested in this theory. They considered several places as likely locations for the entrance to the world beneath, including Tibet, the North Pole, and Antarctica. She frowned. This is interesting. They sent large expeditions to Antarctica, tons of scientists, and none of them were ever heard from again.
I'm not trying to rush you or anything, Bones said, but I've heard this before, and it doesn't really help me with Halcone Rock.
In that case, I won't bother covering any of this. Jessie thumbed through her papers and slid about half of them to the side.
Sorry, I promise I'll read them later. What else have you got?
Have you heard of the ant people?
Bones shook his head. Just the dude from the movie.
Good, then don't interrupt this time. She gave him a sly wink. Hopi legend tells of 2 cataclysms, fire and ice.
Maybe a comet and an ice age?
I told you not to interrupt. Both times, the virtuous members of the Hopi were guided to safety, following a cloud by day and a burning star by night. Sound familiar?
You said not to interrupt.
It's not interrupting if I ask you a question.
Sure, the Exodus story.
Very good. Jessie grinned mischievously. The cloud and the star guided them to the ant people, or Anu Sinom in their language. The ant people took them into their subterranean caves and nurtured and fed them. It's believed that the kiva, the Puebloans' underground center of worship, was inspired by the distant memory of the safety their people found beneath the earth.
Bones nodded and scratched his chin. Jessie had fallen silent, so he felt safe speaking. Interesting that they don't claim there's a hollow earth down there, just caves and caverns. That's much more believable.
Jessie nodded. The ant people are memorialized in pictographs. I printed out a couple.
She pushed 2 sheets over to Bones. The images were of slender beings with long heads and bulbous eyes. The shape of the head reminds me of the Paracelsus skulls, he mused.
And what about this one? She tapped the last image. Look at what he's wearing.
Unlike the other images, this figure seemed to be wearing a rectangular box covered in lines, dots, and circles.
It looks like a spacesuit, doesn't it?
I think you're reaching, but point taken. What else do you have?
The legend extends in different forms to other native peoples of the Southwest. The legends vary in the details, but all associate the underworld dwellers with the constellation Orion.
That got Bones' attention. Several times in recent years, he and his partner Dane Maddock had come across compelling evidence that connected Orion with alien visitors to Earth.
Something wrong? You flinched.
No, I'm fine. Go on.
There's not much else here, unless you care that the Hopi religious leaders refer to the ant people as ant friends or Anunnaki.
Bones dropped his beer bottle. It hit the table with a sharp crack, and he barely caught it before it tipped over.
What is your deal?
Jessie leaned back a little, eyes boring into him from beneath a furrowed brow.
Post-traumatic stress?
He chuckled and shook his head. The Sumerians had a word for beings that once came to Earth from outer space. They called them the Anunnaki.
Really? That's pretty cool. Anyway, there's a little more here about possible links to Egypt. The word for star is the same in both languages, stuff like that.
She shuffled her papers.
To summarize, this part of the country has a strong oral tradition regarding contact with aliens or alien-like creatures. Some are UFO stories, but many are tales of contact with beings living underground.
Their food arrived, and they dug in. Bones had to admit it was some of the best pizza he'd ever tasted. The chilies were fresh and perfectly cooked, the crust just the right balance between soft and crispy. While they ate, Bones considered what Jessie had told him. The legends alone would be scant evidence of alien contact, but having seen the door beneath Halcone Rock, they had little trouble believing it.
I don't get it, Jessie finally said. This Halcone Rock thing is clearly just another legend. You seem like a smart guy, but you're taking this stuff pretty seriously. Why?
Bones took a drink to buy himself some time. He'd been in this sort of situation before, and his options weren't great. He could let her think him a fool who believed in fairy tales, or he could tell her the truth about some of the mind-blowing archaeological finds he and Maddock had made, none of which he could prove for various reasons, and be thought a liar or crazy. "Do you trust me?" he asked.
Jessie bit her lip and gazed at him through half-closed eyes. Finally, she began to slowly nod. I do.
All right. Will you take me at my word that alien contact, even aliens living underground, is not just possible but probable?
Nope, you'll have to show me proof.
Bones shook his head. Can't blame you for that, but I can't do it.
Why not? You're not just giving up the chase, are you?
Not at all. But I'm going to get you back to school and Manny's truck back to him before I do anything else."
"Excuse me, I can't go back to school."
She held up a hand before he could interrupt.
"Can you honestly say I'm safe from whoever came after us? Do you even know who they are or what they want?"
"No, but I have an idea who sent them." In his mind, it was a no-brainer that either Matthew or the sheriff was behind this. Anything else would be far too great a coincidence.
"Good for you. Can you promise me they won't try to get information out of me or use me to get to you?"
Bones stared into Jesse's eyes, trying to think of a single point of disagreement, but she was right. He let his shoulders fall and he slumped back in his seat. "You know, for a college kid, you're really something." Jesse's eyes were immediately afire.
"I'm not a kid. I'm 24 years old."
"Okay, sorry." He raised his hands to ward off her flinty gaze. "I'm just getting old, so everybody under 30 looks young to me." It was lame, but all he could think of at the moment. The girl was pretty, smart, and a lot more tenacious than he'd expected.
"You're not that much older than me," she reproved. "Now I'll call AAA and have them tow Manny's truck to a dealership I know. Then we'll go get my car and head up to Santa Fe."
Bones cocked his head. "That's the wrong direction, chick."
"Not for what I've got planned." Jesse flashed a wicked grin. "We're going to talk to Amanda Shores."